1. Let me tell you about this absolute gem I just stumbled upon. A 1964 Chrysler Imperial Crown sedan that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $12,000. Now I gotta be honest with you, this isn't a perfect car, but it's a true classic find that's got me all revved up. This beauty is rocking a green paint job and has only 65,500 miles on the odometer. Under the hood you've got the original 413 V8 engine, which is a powerhouse, but I'll level with you. It needs a bit of work on the carb. The seller's been upfront about that, which I appreciate. It's got a push-button automatic transmission and rear-wheel drive, which is just classic Imperial goodness. The interior is where this car really shines. It's in perfect condition with leather bench seats that'll make you feel like automotive royalty. The floor is solid with no holes or leaks, which is a big plus for a car of this age. Now, it's not all smooth sailing. The rear right door needs a repaint, and as I mentioned, the carb needs some attention. But hey, that's part of the charm of owning a classic, right? The brakes and motor were redone a few years back, so that's a nice bonus. What really gets me excited is how rare it is to find one of these in this shape. It's all numbers matching, original color, original everything. You could daily drive this beauty, or use it as a weekend cruiser. For $12,000, you're getting a piece of automotive history. It's not perfect, but it's a solid starting point for someone who wants to own a true classic. Plus, the seller seems willing to negotiate, so there might be room to work out a deal. So if you're in the market for a unique, head-turning classic that needs a little TLC, this 1964 Chrysler Imperial might just be your ticket to classic car heaven. Just be prepared to roll up your sleeves and show that carb some love. 2. All right, let's dive deeper into this '66 Mustang. You know, there's something special about these first-generation Mustangs. They're the cars that started the pony car craze, and this '66 model represents the Mustang in its prime. The inline-six might not be as glamorous as the V8, but it's a sturdy, reliable engine that's easier on the wallet when it comes to fuel and maintenance. Let's talk more about those upgrades. The new fuel system components mean you're less likely to have issues with old gas gumming up the works. Fresh brakes and brake lines are a big safety plus. Nothing worse than sketchy brakes on a classic car. And those new leaf springs and shocks? They'll give you a smoother ride and better handling than you'd typically expect from a car of this vintage. Now about those cons. That rough idle could be as simple as a carb cleaning, or it might indicate some wear in the engine. It's something you'd want to check out before making a decision. The transmission drip is annoying but not uncommon in older cars. A new pan gasket isn't a huge job, but it's something to factor into your budget. The rust is probably the biggest concern here. Rust on the quarter panels can be tricky to repair properly, and it's often just the tip of the iceberg. You'd want to get a good look underneath to see how extensive the rust really is. But hey, let's not forget the positives. This Mustang still has its original color and a lot of original parts. In the classic car world, originality counts for a lot. The fact that it drives well is a big plus too. Some classics look great but are a nightmare on the road. At $8,800, it's priced pretty reasonably for a running, driving '66 Mustang. It's not the bargain of the century, but it's not outrageous either. You're getting a car that's had a lot of important mechanical work done, which can save you headaches down the road. Remember, owning a classic car is as much about the journey as the destination. This Mustang needs some love, but it could be a rewarding project for the right person. Just make sure you go into it with your eyes open, knowing you've got some work ahead of you. But man, when you're cruising down the road in a piece of American history, top down, sun shining, it'll all be worth it. 3. We're diving into a real gem. A 1963 Chevy Bell Air sedan that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $15,000. Let me tell you, this isn't your average '63 Bell Air, and I'm excited to give you the lowdown on this beauty. First off, this Bell Air's got some serious muscle under the hood. We're talking about a 327 V8 engine, likely from a '67 full-size Chevy. The owner's done some nice upgrades here with an Edelbrock carb, electric choke, Edelbrock Performer intake, and headers feeding into a dual exhaust. Plus, With that aluminum radiator and electric cooling fans, this baby stays cool even when the weather's hot. Now, let's talk about that transmission. The original Powerglide is gone, replaced with a 700 R4 that the owner rebuilt and installed just 2 years ago. That's a big upgrade, folks. You're getting better fuel economy and more versatile gearing with this setup. The suspension on this Bel Air is where things get really interesting. It's riding on a 4-channel air ride system with shocks all around, which means you can adjust your ride height on the fly. Those Riddler 695 wheels, 18 front, 20 rear, give it a modern stance that really sets it apart. But wait, there's more. The owners put in work on the front end, with new ball joints and bushings, and upgraded to a CPP power steering kit. Add in the 4-wheel disc brakes, and you've got a classic that handles more like a modern car. Now, I've got to be honest with you, it's not all perfect. The body's got some rust issues on the door bottoms and rear quarters, and the paint job looks like it was a DIY job at some point. The trunk floor's got a couple of pinholes and some cutouts from a previous owner. But hey, that's part of the charm of a driver-quality classic, right? Inside, the interior's in good shape and all the lights and signals are working as they should. The odometer shows 75,000 miles, but with all these upgrades, it's more about the condition than the mileage. For $15,000, you're getting a Bel Air that's been thoughtfully upgraded to be a reliable, comfortable cruiser. It's not a show car, but it's a classic you can actually drive and enjoy without worrying about every little scratch or chip. If you're looking for a cool classic that you can hop in and drive anywhere, this '63 Bel Air could be just the ticket. Just be prepared to give those rust spots some attention down the line. 4. We're taking a look at a 1960 Buick La Sabre that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $5,000. Now, I've got to be straight with you folks. This one's a bit of a project, but it could be a diamond in the rough for the right person. Let's start with the basics. This La Sabre is a black sedan with a 364 V8 under the hood and only 66 and 371 miles on the clock. It's got power steering, power brakes, and an automatic transmission. All the creature comforts you'd expect from a Buick of this era. No air conditioning, though, so you'll be rolling down those windows on hot days. Now here's where I need to be real with you. This car currently doesn't run. The seller mentions it was running until about 3 years ago when they stopped driving it. That's a pretty long time for a car to sit, so you've got to expect some issues. We're talking potential fuel system problems, seized engine components, deteriorated rubber parts, the works. But hey, don't let that scare you off if you're looking for a restoration project. These 1960 La Sabres are beautiful cars when they're all fixed up. That sleek, chrome-laden body style is pure Americana, and that 364 V8 can really purr when it's in good shape. At $5,000, you're not breaking the bank to get into classic car ownership. But remember, that's just the entry fee. You'll need to budget for getting this beauty back on the road, and that could involve anything from a simple tune-up to a full engine rebuild, depending on what you find when you start digging in. The seller describes the condition as good, which is promising, but take that with a grain of salt. A non-running car that's been sitting for 3 years is bound to have some issues. You'll want to do a thorough inspection for rust, especially in the usual trouble spots like the floor pans and wheel wells. So, here's the bottom line. If you're handy with a wrench, have some cash set aside for parts, and are looking for a rewarding restoration project, this 1960 Buick La Sabre could be your ticket to classic car heaven. Just go into it with your eyes open, knowing you've got some work ahead of you. But man, when you finally get this beauty purring down the road, top down, chrome gleaming in the sun, it'll all be worth it. Remember folks, classics like these aren't just cars, they're time machines. And with a little love and elbow grease, this La Sabre could be your personal portal to the fabulous 50s. 5. We're diving into a real piece of American automotive history, a 1969 Chevrolet Impala sports sedan that's up for grabs on Craigslist for $6,150. Now let me give you the straight scoop on this four-door beauty. First off, we're looking at a 327 cubic inch V8 under the hood paired with a Powerglide transmission. The owners added a Road Demon carb and a 2.5 dual exhaust system with glass packs, so you know this baby's got a nice rumble to it. With 85,000 miles on the clock, there's still plenty of life left in this old girl. Now I've got to be honest with you, this Impala isn't perfect. The seller's been upfront about it needing some TLC, which is pretty typical for a 55-year-old car, especially one that's lived in the Pacific Northwest. The right side exhaust manifold gasket needs replacing, and it could use a fresh paint job. Speaking of paint, there's some rust to contend with. It's mostly confined to the window trim, with spots no bigger than a quarter. The good news is that the floor pan and trunk are solid, which is a big plus for a car of this vintage. Inside, the interior's holding up pretty well, though the driver's seat is showing its age with some vinyl tearing. But hey, that's just character, right? The seller mentions it drives well and sounds great, which is promising. It's always a good sign when a classic car is still being driven regularly. At $6,250, you're getting a lot of classic American steel for your money. This Impala could be a great project car for someone looking to dive into the world of classic car restoration without breaking the bank. Or, if you're into the patina look, you could just drive it as is and enjoy that vintage vibe. Remember folks, cars like this aren't just transportation, they're time machines. This '69 Impala has stories to tell, and it's waiting for someone to write its next chapter. Whether you want to restore it to showroom condition or just cruise it as a cool daily driver, this Impala's got potential. So, if you're in the market for a classic that needs a little love but has good bones, this '69 Impala might just be your ticket to the golden age of American automobiles. Just be prepared to roll up your sleeves and show it some love. 6. We're diving into a real slice of 1970s Americana, a 1976 Ford Torino 4-door hardtop sedan that's up for grabs on Craigslist for just $2,500. Now let me give you the straight scoop on this blue beauty. First off, this Torino's got the 351 V8 under the hood, paired with a 2-barrel motorcraft carb and a column shift automatic transmission. The seller says it starts, runs, drives, shifts, and stops, which is a great starting point for any classic car project. With only 44,000 miles on the odometer, though it's likely rolled over, this old girl might have some life left in her yet. Now I've got to be honest with you, this Torino isn't perfect. The seller's been upfront about it needing some TLC. The AC needs a recharge and might have a leak. The dash needs some attention, and there are plenty of door dings along both sides. The tires, while still having decent tread, are getting up there in age. But here's the good news. The body and frame reportedly have very little rust, which is a big deal for a car of this vintage. All the lights work, the gauges are functioning, and it's got power steering and brakes. The seller's even thrown in some upgraded trim options. Inside, you've got 8-way power front seats. Not original, but hey, comfort is comfort. And a non-original AM/FM cassette stereo with rear speakers. It's not exactly period correct, but it'll get the job done. At $2,500, you're getting a lot of car for your money. This Torino could be a great project for someone looking to dip their toes into classic car restoration without breaking the bank. Or, with a little work, it could be a unique daily driver that'll turn heads wherever you go. Remember folks, cars like this aren't just transportation. They're time capsules. This '76 Torino is a rolling representation of mid-'70s American automotive design. Whether you want to restore it to showroom condition, turn it into a lowrider, or just cruise it as is, this Torino's got potential. So, if you're in the market for a classic that needs some love but has good bones, this '76 Torino might just be your ticket to the disco era. Just be prepared to roll up your sleeves, break out the elbow grease, and show it some love. And hey, at this price, you'll have some cash left over for those inevitable trips to the parts store. 7. We're diving into a real piece of 1970s opulence, a 1977 Lincoln Mark V that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $9,000. Let me tell you, this land yacht is a sight to behold. First off, let's talk about that mileage. This Lincoln's only clocked 57,000 miles in its 46-year life. That's barely broken in for these old-school luxury barges. The seller claims these are actual miles, which is a big deal for collectors and enthusiasts alike. Now the seller's been putting some work into this beauty. We're looking at a new battery, electronic control module, and carburetor, all crucial components for keeping this big boat running smoothly. They've also treated it to a new vinyl top, which is a nice touch. These vinyl tops can be a real pain if they're not maintained, so having a fresh one is definitely a plus. But let's be real here, folks. This is a 46-year-old car, and while the seller describes it as being in good condition, you've got to take that with a grain of salt. These old Lincolns are known for their fair share of quirks and potential issues. The ad doesn't mention anything about the air conditioning, power windows, or other luxury features that were prone to failure in these cars. It's also worth noting that these big V8s aren't exactly fuel sippers, so be prepared for some hefty gas bills if you plan on daily driving this beast. That being said, at $9,000, you're getting a lot of classic American luxury for your money. These Mark V's are pure 70s excess on wheels, with their long hoods, opera windows, and plush interiors. They're not making cars like this anymore, folks. If you're in the market for a unique cruiser that'll turn heads and give you a taste of how the other half lived in the disco era, this Lincoln could be your ticket. Just be prepared for some potential maintenance headaches and don't expect modern car reliability. Remember, with classics like these, you're not just buying a car, you're buying an experience. Whether you're cruising down the boulevard or pulling up to a car show, this Mark V is sure to make a statement. Just make sure you've got a good mechanic on speed dial and a healthy budget for keeping this luxury liner afloat. So if you've got $9,000 burning a hole in your pocket and a yearning for some 70s luxury, this 1977 Lincoln Mark V might just be calling your name. Just be sure to give it a thorough inspection before you commit. 8. We're taking a look at a real blast from the past, a 1979 Buick Skylark that's up for grabs on Craigslist for $3,150. Now let me give you the lowdown on this yellow beauty. First off, this Skylark's sporting a 3.8L V6 engine paired with an automatic transmission. The seller says it runs and drives, which is always a good start for a car that's over 40 years old. Now here's where things get interesting. The odometer shows 49,704 miles, but the seller's not sure if it's rolled over. Given the age of the car, it's probably safe to assume it has. But hey, you never know. One of the big pluses here is that the AC works and blows cold. If you've ever dealt with vintage car AC, you know that's a rare treat. The interior is described as original and in good condition, which is another nice surprise for a car of this vintage. Now, I've got to be straight with you. This Skylark isn't perfect. The body has what the seller calls normal wear and tear, which for a 44-year-old car could mean a variety of things. But they do say it's in overall good condition, and importantly, the floorboards are solid. That's a big deal for these older cars, as rust can be a real killer. It's got good tires and all its hubcaps, which is a nice touch. The manual windows and locks might be a drawback for some, but hey, that's just fewer things to break, right? At $3,150, you're getting a piece of late 70s Americana that could be a fun weekend cruiser or a unique daily driver. It's not going to win any drag races with that V6, but it should be reliable and easy to work on. Remember, folks, cars like this aren't just transportation, they're time machines. This '79 Skylark is a rolling representation of a bygone era in American automotive design. Whether you're looking to relive your youth or just want something different from the sea of modern cars on the road, this Buick could be your ticket. So, if you're in the market for an affordable classic that's ready to drive and has some charm, this '79 Skylark might just fit the bill. Just be prepared for the quirks that come with owning a 40-plus-year-old car, and maybe budget for a new set of fuzzy dice to complete that 70s vibe. 9. Let me tell you about this absolute gem I stumbled upon on Craigslist. A 1965 Ford Thunderbird that's currently up for grabs at $14,950. Now, I've got to be honest with you. This T-Bird looks like it's in excellent condition, and the seller's description backs that up. This beauty is packing a V8 under the hood, with rear-wheel drive and an automatic transmission, a classic combo that'll make you feel like you're cruising through the '60s all over again. With only 83,600 miles on the odometer, this T-Bird has plenty of life left in it. The clean title is just the cherry on top of this vintage sundae. Now let's talk features. This Thunderbird is loaded with goodies like power steering, air conditioning, power windows, and a tilt wheel. Oh, and did I mention it's got front disc brakes? That's a nice safety upgrade for a car of this era. The seller says it's a fun car to drive, and I believe them. These 65 Thunderbirds are known for their smooth ride and eye-catching style. It sounds like this one is ready to hit the road and turn heads wherever it goes. Look, I'm always straight with you guys, and if this car was in poor condition, I'd tell you. But from what I can see, and what the seller is saying, this Thunderbird seems to be in great shape. It really does sound like it just needs a new home and an owner who'll appreciate its classic charm. So, if you're in the market for a piece of American automotive history that you can actually drive and enjoy, this 65 Thunderbird might just be your ticket. Just remember, with classic cars like this, it's always a good idea to see it in person, and maybe get a mechanic to look it over before you commit. But man, what a sweet ride this could be for the right enthusiast. 10. Alright, let's dive deeper into this 66 Chrysler Newport, because there's always more to unpack with these classic rides. So we're looking at a big, beautiful piece of Mopar history here. The Newport was Chrysler's entry-level full-size car back in the day, but don't let that fool you. These were still pretty luxurious by 1960s standards. We're talking about a car that would have turned heads cruising down Main Street back in '66, and it's still got presence today. Now let's talk about that V8 engine. Chrysler was known for their robust power plants, and while we don't have specifics, it was likely either a 383 or a 440 cubic inch engine. Either way, you're looking at some serious American muscle under that hood. With rear-wheel drive, this baby probably has some get up and go, even with its sizable frame. The green paint is an interesting choice. It's giving me some serious 60s vibes. Pair that with the tinted windows and the lowered stance from those air shocks, and you've got a Newport that's part classic cruiser, part custom ride. It's a unique look that'll definitely stand out at car shows or just cruising around town. Let's address the elephant in the room, that broken odometer. It's showing 97,500 miles, but who knows how long it's been stuck there. Could be 197,500 miles, could be more. This is something you'll want to dig into if you're serious about the car. Check for signs of wear on the interior, pedals, and steering wheel to get a better idea of its true mileage. Speaking of the interior, these Newports came with some pretty plush accommodations for their time. Bench seats were the norm, often covered in vinyl or cloth. The dash would have been a mix of chrome and painted metal, with that classic 60s style that's so sought after today. Of course, we don't know the condition of the interior from the ad, so that's something you'd want to check out in person. One thing to keep in mind with a car like this: parts availability. While Chrysler made a ton of these back in the day, finding specific components might be a bit of a treasure hunt. That could be part of the fun for some folks, but it's something to consider if you're planning on daily driving this beauty. The $7,500 asking price seems pretty reasonable for a running driving piece of 60s Americana, especially with the custom touches. But as always, there's room for negotiation. That OBO, or best offer, in the listing gives you some wiggle room. 11. We're taking a look at a real gem from the 60s, a 1966 Plymouth Valiant that's up for grabs at $6,000. Now let me give you the straight scoop on this classic compact. First off, this Valiant is rocking a 6-cylinder engine paired with an automatic transmission and rear-wheel drive. A combo that was all about reliability and efficiency back in the day. The seller claims it's in good condition, which is pretty impressive for a car pushing 60 years old. They also say it runs great, which is music to any classic car lover's ears. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, the odometer. It's showing 58,000 miles, but hold your horses, folks. The seller mentions the odometer is broken, so we're in the dark about the true mileage. That's something to keep in mind and maybe dig into a bit more if you're serious about this ride. On the bright side, this Valiant's got some positives going for it. The seller mentions new tags, so you're good to go on registration for a while. And here's a bonus for California folks. Smog isn't needed, which can be a real headache with older cars in the Golden State. The interior is described as clean, which is always a good sign in a classic. And those new tires? That's money you don't have to spend right off the bat. The brown paint color might not be everyone's cup of tea, but hey, it's period correct and gives this Valiant some authentic 60s vibes. Look, I always shoot straight with you guys. This Valiant isn't perfect. That broken odometer is a bit of a question mark, and with a car this old, you're bound to have some quirks that come with age. But for $6,000, you're getting a piece of Mopar history that's said to run great and is ready to cruise. These Valiants were known for their durability and simplicity, making them a great choice for someone looking to dip their toes into the classic car world without breaking the bank. Plus, with its compact size and 6-cylinder engine, it could even make for a fun, unique daily driver if you're so inclined. So if you're in the market for a classic 60s compact with some charm and don't mind a little uncertainty with the mileage, this 66 Valiant could be worth a look. As always, give it a thorough inspection in person. Maybe get a mechanic's opinion, and don't be afraid to ask the seller some more questions about its history and condition. 12. We're looking at a piece of 70s luxury, a 1977 Cadillac Coupe DeVille. I'm assuming it's a Coupe DeVille since there's no Cleveland model, that's up for grabs at $5,000. Now let me give you the honest lowdown on this land yacht. First things first, the seller's being upfront about the condition, listing it as fair, and folks, that's probably generous. This Caddy's got some issues we need to talk about, but let's start with the positives. It's got a clean title, an 8-cylinder engine, probably the 425 cubic inch V8, rear-wheel drive, and an automatic transmission. Classic Cadillac luxury right there. The body's reportedly nice with no dents, which is a big plus for a car of this vintage. It's sporting a blue paint job, which could look pretty slick if it's in decent shape. The odometer shows 70,000 miles, but as always with older cars, take that with a grain of salt. Now, let's address the elephants in the room. The seller says the transmission is starting to slip. That's a red flag, my friends. Transmission work on these old boats can get pricey fast. They also mention that the rear leather seat needs work because someone spilled bleach on it, which ate up the leather. Ouch. The good news? It runs and drives. The bad news? Well, for how long is the question? The seller says they must sell, which often means they're motivated and might be open to negotiation. Look, I always shoot straight with you guys. This Caddy isn't for the faint of heart. It's a project car, plain and simple. That slipping transmission is a ticking time bomb. And who knows what other issues are lurking under that massive hood or in the complex, for its time, electronics. But here's the thing. For $5,000, you're getting a piece of Americana that, when fixed up, could be a real head-turner. These 70s Cadillacs were the epitome of luxury in their day, with smooth rides, tons of space, and more chrome than you can shake a stick at. If you're handy with a wrench, have some cash set aside for repairs, and always dreamed of cruising in 70s style, this could be your chance. Just know what you're getting into. This is a car that'll need some love, time, and money to get back to its former glory. So if you're up for a challenge and have a soft spot for these old-school luxury barges, this 77 Caddy might be worth a look. As always, give it a thorough inspection, maybe get a mechanic's opinion, and don't be afraid to negotiate on that price given the known issues. Happy hunting, classic car fans? And remember, sometimes the biggest projects bring the biggest rewards. 13. We're diving into a real gem from the 80s, a 1985 Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham that's up for grabs at $5,500. Now let me give you the straight scoop on this classic luxury cruiser. First off, this Fleetwood is looking pretty sweet in its white exterior with a burgundy plush velour interior. Talk about 80s luxury. The seller claims it's in excellent condition, which is pretty impressive for a car pushing 40 years old. Under the hood, we've got a 4.5L V8 engine, paired with an automatic transmission and rear-wheel drive. Classic Cadillac comfort and power, right there. Now, here's where things get interesting. The odometer is showing just 48,000 miles, which the seller believes to be original. If that's true, folks, we're looking at a seriously low mileage survivor here. The body is described as very solid, and the interior is said to be original and quite nice. Music to any classic car lover's ears. The seller's been putting some work into this land yacht, too. We're talking all new brakes, new tires, a rebuilt alternator, and a new muffler, among other things. That's a good chunk of maintenance taken care of right there, which is always a plus when you're looking at an older car. Now, I always shoot straight with you guys, so let's talk about the couple of issues this Caddy has. The radio and power antenna aren't working correctly. In the grand scheme of things, these are relatively minor issues, but they're something to keep in mind if you want everything in perfect working order. Look, for $5,500, you're getting a piece of American luxury history that's said to start, run, ride, and drive great. These Fleetwood Broms were the epitome of cushy cruising back in the day, with their smooth rides, spacious interiors, and all the bells and whistles Cadillac could cram in. If you're in the market for a classic 80s luxury car that's ready to hit the road and turn heads, this Fleetwood could be your ticket. It sounds like it's been well maintained, and with those low miles, it could be a real find for the right enthusiast. As always, I'd recommend giving it a thorough inspection in person, maybe get a mechanic's opinion, and don't be afraid to ask the seller some more questions about its history and condition. The seller seems motivated to move it, so there might even be some wiggle room on the price. 14. We're looking at a real piece of automotive history. A 1959 Edsel Ranger that's up for grabs at $7,500 firm. Now, let me give you the honest lowdown on this infamous classic. First off, we're talking about a four-door sedan with a V8 engine and automatic transmission. Pretty standard fare for a late 50s American car. The seller claims it's in good condition overall, which is pretty impressive for a car that's over 60 years old. They're saying the original paint, upholstery, chrome, and stainless are all in great shape. If that's true, folks, we're looking at a well-preserved piece of Ford's most notorious experiment. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, the engine. The seller straight up admits it needs work. That's a big deal, my friends. We don't know the extent of the issues, but engine work on these old boats can get pricey fast. On the bright side, they say everything else works, which is a plus for a car of this vintage. The odometer shows 86,000 miles, but as always with older cars, take that with a grain of salt. It's got a clean title, which is always good to see. Look, I always shoot straight with you guys. This Edsel isn't for the faint of heart. It's a project car, plain and simple. That engine issue needs to be addressed before you can truly enjoy cruising in 50s style. But here's the thing. Edsels are rare birds. They were only made for 3 model years, and finding one in good cosmetic condition isn't easy. For $7,500, you're getting a piece of automotive history that, when fixed up, could be a real head-turner. These Edsels were infamous in their day for their unique, some would say bizarre, styling, especially that horse collar grille. Love it or hate it, it's definitely memorable. If you're handy with a wrench, have some cash set aside for that engine work, and always dreamed of owning one of the most talked about flops in car history, this could be your chance. Just know what you're getting into. This is a car that'll need some love, time, and money to get back on the road. Chapter 15. We're checking out a piece of 60s Pontiac muscle, a 1966 Catalina that's up for grabs at $12,000 or best offer. Now, let me give you the straight scoop on this classic cruiser. First off, we're looking at a sedan with an automatic transmission and a clean title. The odometer's showing 84,000 miles, but as always with these older rides, take that with a grain of salt. Now, here's where I've got to keep it real with you folks. The seller's description is pretty sparse, which raises some eyebrows. They're calling it a restoration project and saying it's in running condition, which tells me this Catalina isn't exactly a showroom beauty. It sounds like it's more of a diamond in the rough. The seller mentions classic Pontiac styling with potential to restore to its former glory. That's a polite way of saying this car needs work. Probably a good bit of it. We're not getting any details on the engine, interior condition, or any specific issues, which is a bit concerning for a $12,000 asking price. Look, I always shoot straight with you guys. This Catalina could be a great project for the right person, but you've got to go into it with your eyes wide open. These 66 Catalinas were beasts in their day, often packing big V8 engines with plenty of power. When restored, they're absolute head-turners. But at this price point, for a car that needs restoration, you've got to be prepared for some serious work and additional investment. We're talking potential engine rebuilds, interior overhauls, bodywork, the whole 9 yards. If you're an experienced wrench-turner with a passion for Pontiacs and a vision for bringing this Catalina back to life, it could be a rewarding project. But if you're looking for something closer to turnkey, this might not be the ride for you. My advice? If you're seriously interested, get a lot more information from the seller. Ask for detailed photos of the body, engine, and interior. Find out what exactly needs work and what's already been done. And don't be afraid to negotiate on that price. Remember, they did say or best offer. So, if you're up for a challenge and have always dreamed of cruising in 60s Pontiac style, this 66 Catalina might be worth a look. Just be prepared for a project, not a ready-to-roll classic. 16. All right, let's really dig into this Cadillac DeVille and paint the full picture for you. When we're talking about a 77 or possibly 79 Cadillac, we're looking at the tail end of the bigger is better era in American automotive design. These cars were absolute behemoths, stretching nearly 19 feet long and tipping the scales at around 2.5 tons. They're not just cars, they're rolling statements of excess and luxury from a bygone era. Now, the DeVille of this vintage would have originally come with a massive 425 cubic inch, that's 7.0 liters for you metric folks, V8 engine. These power plants weren't known for their efficiency or environmental friendliness, but they did deliver smooth, effortless power that could waft this land yacht down the highway with ease. The seller doesn't mention any engine work, so we're left to assume it's original. At 149,000 miles, if it hasn't been rebuilt, it might be due for some attention. Let's talk about that hydraulic setup for a moment. This is a significant modification that completely changes the character of the car. Originally, these Cadillacs were designed for a smooth, floating ride. With hydraulics, you're looking at the ability to raise, lower, and even bounce the car on command. It's a mod that comes straight out of the lowrider culture, and it's pretty cool to see on a Cadillac of this vintage. However, it's also a complex system that requires maintenance and can be prone to issues if not properly installed or cared for. The interior is another point of interest. Cadillac interiors of this era were already pretty plush, but the seller mentions a peanut butter interior, which suggests it's been reupholstered. This could be a big plus if it's been done well, as finding original interior parts in good condition can be challenging for cars of this age. The new headliner is also a nice touch, as sagging headliners are a common issue in older vehicles. One thing to consider with a car like this is parts availability. While Cadillac made a lot of these cars, finding specific parts, especially for the interior or trim, can sometimes be a challenge. You might find yourself hunting swap meets or online forums to track down that perfect piece to complete a restoration. The addition of a modern stereo system with Bluetooth is a nice nod to practicality. It allows you to enjoy modern conveniences while still basking in the vintage luxury of a classic Cadillac. However, purists might argue it detracts from the original feel of the car. Now let's address the elephant in the room: fuel economy. These cars were notorious gas guzzlers even when new, and age probably hasn't improved that situation. You're looking at single-digit MPG in the city, maybe low teens on the highway if you're lucky. In today's world of fluctuating gas prices, that's something to seriously consider if you plan on driving this car regularly. 17. Let's dive into this 1968 Oldsmobile Cutless convertible that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $15,000. Now I've got to be straight with you. There are some interesting details in this listing that we need to unpack. First off, the seller claims this Cutless is in excellent condition, which is pretty impressive for a car that's over half a century old. They're asking a decent chunk of change for it, so you'd hope it's in tip-top shape. The odometer shows 44,721 miles. But here's the kicker. The seller admits the odometer is broken. So, we're in the dark about the true mileage on this classic, which is something to keep in mind. Now, let's talk about what's under the hood. It's sporting a 6-cylinder engine, which is a bit unusual for a Cutless of this era. Most came with V8s. The seller mentions it's a 330 cubic inch motor, which is confusing because that size was typically a V8. So, there might be some mixed signals here. The transmission is a turbo 400 automatic with a floor shifter, which is a solid, reliable gearbox from that era. The convertible top is only 2 years old, which is a definite plus. Those can be expensive to replace. Now here's where things get a bit custom. This Cutless is rolling on some seriously big wheels, 20 inches in the back and 18 in the front. That's a far cry from the original 14 or 15-inch wheels it would have come with. The seller also mentions a custom paint job, but doesn't provide details on the color or quality. Look, $15,000 isn't chump change for a '68 Cutless, especially one with a 6-cylinder engine and some non-original modifications. The broken odometer is a red flag. There's no way to verify the true mileage. While the seller claims excellent condition, you'd want to inspect this car thoroughly before pulling the trigger. This Olds could be a fun cruiser for someone who appreciates a mix of classic style with some modern touches. But potential buyers should go in with eyes wide open. Get a good look at that custom paint job, check how those big wheels affect the ride, and maybe bring along a mechanic to give that engine a once-over. Remember, when dealing with classics like this, what you see isn't always what you get. It could be a gem, or it could be a money pit waiting to happen. Either way, it's bound to turn heads cruising down the boulevard with the top down on a sunny day. 18. Let's talk about this 1971 Cadillac Cala that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $13,900. This big, beautiful boat of a car is a true testament to the era when American luxury meant excess in all the right ways. Now, the seller claims this Cala is in excellent condition, and with only 75,000 original miles on the clock, that's not hard to believe. This two-door hardtop coupe is powered by Cadillac's legendary 472 cubic inch V8 engine. That's a whopping 7.7 liters of pure, unadulterated American muscle. This power plant was known for its smooth operation and enough torque to pull a house off its foundation. The seller mentions some significant recent work that's been done, which is always good to hear with a classic like this. We're talking new brakes, a new transmission, and new tires. That's a lot of crucial components that you won't have to worry about replacing anytime soon. They've also added a dual exhaust system, which probably gives this land yacht a nice, throaty rumble. One of the coolest features of these old Cadillacs is the power windows, which were pretty high-tech for 1971. It's great to hear that they're still functioning. Often, these can be a pain point in older cars. The Cala is finished in green, which was a popular color choice for Cadillacs of this era. Without seeing pictures, I can't comment on the condition of the paint, but given the seller's description of excellent condition, we can hope it's still shining like new. Now, $13,900 isn't pocket change, but for a well-maintained classic Cadillac with some recent major work done, it's not outrageous either. These cars were built to last, and if this one has been taken care of, it could be a great investment for the right buyer. However, let's keep it real. This is still a 50-year-old car. Even in excellent condition, it's going to need more attention than a modern vehicle. Parts can be expensive and sometimes hard to find. And let's not even talk about the fuel economy. With that massive V8, you'll be on a first-name basis with your local gas station attendants. But here's the thing. You don't buy a '71 Cadillac for practicality. You buy it because you want to cruise down the highway in supreme comfort, turning heads wherever you go. You buy it for the way it makes you feel like $1 million behind the wheel, for the stories it tells, and for the history it represents. If you're in the market for a classic piece of American automotive history, and you've got the means to keep it maintained, this Cadillac Cala could be a fantastic choice. Just make sure you give it a thorough inspection and maybe even a test drive before you hand over your hard-earned cash. After all, with classics like these, it's always better to be safe than sorry. But if everything checks out, well, you might just be cruising home in one of the finest examples of American luxury from the early 70s. And let me tell you, that's a feeling that's hard to beat. 19. Let's dive into this 1970 Plymouth Duster that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $7,500. Now, I've got to be straight with you. This isn't your average classic car listing. And there's a lot to unpack here. First off, the seller is advertising this as an H-Code 340 4-speed Duster, which is a pretty desirable combination for Mopar enthusiasts. The H-Code signifies the high-performance 340 cubic inch V8, and paired with a 4-speed manual, this would have been a blast to drive if it had an engine and transmission. That's right, this Duster is being sold as a roller, no drivetrain included. So while the bones of a hot muscle car are here, you're looking at a significant project to get it roadworthy. Now, let's talk about the positives. The seller claims the body has zero rust and no patch panels, which is impressive for a 50-year-old car. They're also advertising it as very straight, which is music to the ears of anyone who's dealt with bodywork on old cars. The lemon twist yellow is a high-impact color that was popular back in the day, and if it's original, that's a big plus for collectors. Some desirable features are mentioned: rally gauges, power steering, and disc brakes. The factory 834 rear end is also a valuable component, especially for anyone planning to build this into a performance machine. The odometer shows 138,000 miles, but given that this is a roller, take that number with a grain of salt. The title is clean and current, which is always good news with project cars. Now, here's where we need to keep it real. The seller describes this as being in excellent condition, but let's be clear. A car without an engine and transmission is far from excellent in the traditional sense. It's an excellent starting point for a restoration, sure, but don't expect to drive this home. The asking price of $7,500 might seem steep for a car without a drivetrain, but for the right buyer, it could be a deal. The seller mentions that fully restored versions of these H-Code A bodies are fetching $45K plus. While that's true, remember that getting from this roller to a fully restored car will require a significant investment of time, money, and skill. In conclusion, this 1970 Plymouth Duster represents an interesting opportunity for the right person. If you're a Mopar enthusiast with the skills, resources, and patience for a serious project, this could be the foundation for something special. The rust-free body and desirable options are a great starting point. However, if you're looking for something you can drive home and enjoy immediately, this isn't the car for you. As with any project car, go into this with your eyes wide open, a realistic budget, and a clear vision of what you want to achieve. If you do decide to take the plunge, you could end up with a seriously cool piece of muscle car history. Just be prepared for a journey to get there. 20. Let's dive into this 1966 Plymouth Belvedere II that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $14,500. Now, I've got to be straight with you. This listing is a bit of a mixed bag, and we need to read between the lines a bit. The seller claims this is a one-owner, all-original V8 Belvedere with an automatic transmission. That's a pretty sweet starting point for a classic Mopar enthusiast. They're advertising it as a fun muscle car, which, depending on which V8 is under the hood, could be spot on. These mid-60s Plymouths could be real sleepers, especially if optioned right. Now, here's where things get interesting. The odometer apparently shows 10,000 miles, but let's be real. Unless this car has been in a time capsule for the last 55 years, that's almost certainly 110,000 miles. The seller mentions it's been garage kept, which explains the allegedly clean, rust-free body. They also claim it still wears its original paint, which, if true, is pretty remarkable for a car of this age. Some nice features are mentioned: power steering and air conditioning. Both of these were desirable options back in '66 and can make the driving experience much more enjoyable today. The seller also notes they have the original wheels, which is a nice touch for authenticity. However, let's address some red flags. The description is a bit jumbled, mentioning a garage cap, maybe they meant car, and oddly throwing in mower in the middle of the description. This could just be typos, but it does make you wonder about the attention to detail. The seller says it runs and drives, but doesn't provide any details about recent maintenance or the condition of crucial components like the transmission, brakes, or suspension. For a 55-year-old car, these are important considerations. At $14,500, this Belvedere isn't cheap, but it's not outrageous either if it's truly in good condition. However, potential buyers should approach with caution. The vague description leaves a lot of questions unanswered. In conclusion, this 1966 Plymouth Belvedere II could be a gem, a well-preserved original example of mid-60s Mopar muscle. But it could also be a car that's been sitting for years and needs a lot of work to be truly roadworthy. If you're seriously interested, you'll want to see this car in person, get under it, and maybe even have a mechanic take a look. Check that VIN to confirm it's truly a one-owner car, and don't be afraid to ask for documentation.